Hello and welcome to Ditch Witch Diaries. We are here and we are talking about trees, and we are going to start off with the lovely Raven.
All right. Willow tree. Let me bring it a little closer. Make
Nice.
sure my laptop doesn't fall. There we go. Okay. So we're gonna start off. I'm gonna spend a good amount of time on like identification. I really like doing that for the trees, like because I that's one of the whole points of this, right? Is to like be able to wild forage your material. So
Yeah,
going into Willow, I couldn't really find a very good botanical image. This one's fine, but um, I
that's
couldn't
amazing, by the
find
way.
one that looked more, I don't know, more like the rest of our botanicals, but that's a good one. So the family is I was having trouble with this before, Silicaceae, I think. I don't know, something like that. But it's the salad.
Yeah, it's like salicylic acid, salicylae,
Yeah, Silicaceae.
salicylia,
Yeah.
salicylia.
Uh,
Okay.
so the genus is the Salix, and there are 300 to 400 recognized species worldwide. So lots and lots and like hundreds and hundreds of different
Wow.
types of willows. So they're native to a lot of different places, North America, Europe, Asia, North Africa, even some in like Alaska, which we'll talk about. So they're kind of just everywhere.
That's wild
Um,
because you think of it like as a swamp. Every time I see a willow tree, it reminds me of Scooby Doo. like like the swamp since I don't know why.
Swampy, yeah. Yeah, fair, fair. Um, so there are two different types.
Okay.
It's either going to be, oh, actually, I'll talk about that in a second. So, mostly are going to be deciduous trees or shrubs, which basically they're like really woody that shed all of their leaves annually, and then they're dormant in the cold and dry season. So they're not like evergreens, you know.
Mhm.
Leaves are typically narrow, long, and a little bit serrated. Different species will have more serratedness, and some will have less. But they almost kind of look like the long, skinnier eucalyptus leaves, which is what kind of came to mind.
Mm.
The flowers occur as catkins, which are like elongated flower clusters. I'll show you a picture of that in a second. And then the seeds disperse as like cotton fibers. It looks like cotton. They are very, very, very fast growing, and most of them are water loving, which we'll talk a lot more about. So these are the seeds. So these are the what are they? Catkins. These are the catkins, and when they start kind of like flower, like when they're ready to shed their seeds and disperse their seeds, it looks like these cottons, so that they get carried on the wind pretty easily. Um, and almost all of or not almost all of the willow species, this is what their seeds generally look like. Now, for some of them, these seed pods grow more vertical, like come up. Some of them they grow down, but they all generally look like this. So we're going to go into the four most common ones like discussed. First, my personal favorite, the weeping willow. Weeping willow is one of my favorite trees ever. I feel like it plays very well to my watery nature.
I bet.
But weeping willow, so beautiful. So it's the Salix babylonica, and it's native to northern China. So we do have it here in the US, but it's propagated. It's not going to be like native here. Height is usually 35 to 65 feet. The crown shape is broad but dramatically cascading. Branch orientation, long flexible branches droop downward, often reaching the ground. And the canopy appearance, they call it like an umbrella shaped. So here she is in her glory. Isn't
Oh,
she beautiful?
very beautiful.
I
That's the one. That's the one
know.
that's kind of like
So,
and in Louisiana it's like there's like moss even growing on them or yeah,
yeah,
like oh it's so
so
amazing.
pretty. Gorgeous. Look at that one. Oh, I love
Oh
it.
wow.
I know.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, so beautiful. And
I
then this
love
one.
that. Oh, they
I
just
know.
get, I love how they're touching the water. That's so pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about like why they kind of bend down and touch water and stuff. But yeah, I love it when it's like full. A lot of them, they're not like fully umbrella shaped. They're kind of just like to one side like this. But I love it when they're fully around so you can
Fully
like
like it,
sit
yeah.
under them. Yeah, so nice. Okay. Oh, and then these are the leaves of the weeping willow. So you can see like a little bit of serration happening along the edges. Okay, so then we have the white willow. So the white willow is the Salix alba, which is native to Europe, Western and Central Asia. It's just a large tree. It does have silvery leaf undersides, which I'll show you a picture in a second. This one is much taller, so 50 to 80 feet. The crown shape is kind of irregular, a little bit more rounded, and branches spread outward rather than drooping. So the weeping willow is the only one that has like the true like drooping branches. The other ones just look more like trees. So these are the leaves. So you can see it looks similar to the weeping willow leaves, but the underside is the silvery color, which is why it's called the alba.
Mm.
And this is what it looks like.
Oh,
So you get a little tiny bit of like the drooping, but not nearly as dramatic as the weeping willow.
yeah.
And then we have the Scouler's willow, which is the Salix scouleriana, which is native to Western North America. Very mountainy though, so it's not like water. It's not associated with the water, which we'll circle back to in a second. Very mountain and dry area. This is a shrub. And the height is like 10 to 40 feet, so it can still be qualified as like a tree, but it's much shorter. Rounded to irregular, pretty like open though. Branches also tend to grow upright and spreading, so it's like much thicker. Something to note though that the Scouler's willow is like um it's notable because it doesn't need the water, right? It grows in like dry forests, mountain slopes, disturbed soils, very like dry area. And there's a classification for that within the willow system, which we'll circle back to after we go through the four main ones. So this is what it looks like. Very like shrub looking, lots of like small, thinner branches.
Yep.
And then these are the leaves. So still elongated, still serrated a little bit, but less sharp, more kind of rounded serration and more wide. And then the fourth and final, like big one that we're going to talk about is the Arctic willow. So the Arctic willow is the Salix arctica, native to the Arctic regions of North America, Europe, and Asia. The habit is the tundra. That's where it
Really?
grows, is tundra regions. It's considered a very low shrub, and it is 1 to 6 inches tall. and,
Holy
and
moly, that's
so it's
little.
not really like a tree, but let's look at this. The Arctic willow is like one, it's considered it's the northernmost woody plant on Earth. So instead of growing tall, it stays really, really low to the ground to avoid the winds, to conserve heat, things like that. So here she is. She's so cute.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Oh
yeah.
my goodness,
So
that's so crazy. Like when you said that, I was thinking, oh, she has to be 1 to 6 feet. But no, it is
yeah,
like little baby. It's like a little,
yeah, little baby.
it's a little willow.
Yeah, and so she's not considered a tree technically. She's called a dwarf shrub, but she's still part of the Salix family because she has the flower structure, which you can
Yeah.
see. She still has like the cotton-like tuft to germinate, which is very typical and like necessary for the Salix family. And she's part of like the lineage from like the Salix lineage. So still considered a willow, but little baby.
That's amazing.
So I know. So when we're for the rest of this like presentation, I'm not really including this one, the Arctic willow,
Yeah.
because we're focusing more on like the tree regions, but a lot of it could be generalized to this one as well because it's still a member of the willow, but we're focusing on
It's
like
adorable to
yeah,
include.
I know.
So cute.
I
Like I
don't
want
want
a
to
willow
not
plant
include
like
you.
that.
We love
The
you,
little,
but
oh
yeah.
my gosh, I love it.
Okay. So so cute. So let's talk about some more like ecological roles. So willows are very, very, very important in ecosystems for a variety of reasons. First is soil stabilization. Their roots, it's one of the best fam or like types of trees to prevent erosions because the roots are like massive root systems. And they're not thick root systems. They're very a lot of thinner ones, which I have a picture I'll show you in a second. So
Okay.
really, really, really good to prevent erosions. They're also really common to provide food and shelter for just kind of like native wildlife, especially deers, beavers, moose, insects, all kinds of wild ones. And also, they're considered a pioneer species, which means that they colonize disturbed soils, which usually colonization is not a great thing, but it does that to help the ecosystems recover. So if there's a lot of erosions happening or a lot of like non-nutritive soil where other things can't grow, then the willows can come in and kind of like help the whole ecosystem recover. So they're called a pioneer species. Now, you can see the root systems
Oh,
here.
wow.
They
Yeah. I
are
love that.
tangled, but strongly, strongly, strongly associated with water. Now, the willow species are broken into two classifications. We have the riparian willows,
Riparian.
riparian, thank you, which are the water ones. So grow along rivers, lakes, wetlands, floodplains, swamplands, all kinds of stuff, or upland willows, which are the ones that grow in like the drier environments. Now, most willows are the wet willows. They're not upland willows, but there are a few species that are upland. Now, the riparian willows, they grow very, very quickly. So because they grow so fast, they need a lot of water, which is why they tend to flourish near water because they need a lot. Also the seeds are like really short-lived. They're little cotton tufts, and so they don't last very long. So by the time they hit the ground, they need to be in like soil that's ready to go. And so that kind of wet soil is going to be near water. And then also the root systems are completely comfortable with periodic flooding. They can like kind of handle that really, really well, which ties into like their needing water and all of this other stuff. So that tends to be why they're so like they grow so well near water. So other names. The other names aren't there a lot of like I don't know. There's a lot of other names. So in Celtic areas, they're called moon trees often because they're associated with like lunar symbolism and water and stuff. European folklore, so not necessarily still being called this, but in folklore it was called the weeping tree, associated with grief and mourning. Now, a lot of these are going to be specifically for weeping willow, but it doesn't really specify which type of willow. But when you look at like associated with grief and mourning, we know that's weeping willow. Witch's tree because it's linked to like intuition, tree of enchantment, which just usually if there's a tree called the tree of enchantment in folklore, European folklore, it's talking about the willow. And then for indigenous names, there's obviously different names depending on like the culture, but we have basket tree because it's used to like make baskets, which we'll talk about later. Medicine tree, we'll talk about that later. Water tree, and like bendable wood or river tree. So let's talk about some like historical uses. So the branches are extremely flexible. So they are like the perfect type of branch for like basket weaving and stuff because they're strong, but they're really bendable. So really commonly used for baskets, fishing traps, storage containers, and any type of like furniture. For indigenous North America, we find that they were using willow for also basket weaving, fish traps, cradle boards, carrying baskets, lots of stuff because again, they're strong but built but bendable. So any time that you needed like wood to bend a lot, willow was the go-to. Also, for construction. So because it's like really lightweight, it was historically used for tool handles, which I'll show you a picture on the next slide, small furniture, fencing, and thatched roof supports. Thatched roof supports look like this, where they're using the wood to like support
Oh,
the the roof essentially. And then in some regions, the branches were woven into like wattle walls, which are just kind of like the internal structure of the walls, and then they would put the clay over that. So this is it's dated to be 430,000-year-old wooden handle tools, and these are the oldest handle tools ever found. And we believe that this is from willow. We're not totally sure, but like looking at the structure, it looks like willow. And then it just continues on. We just find more and more and more like handle tools that are made from willow. So also used for agriculture, land management, which we kind of talked about a little bit, but extremely strong root systems. So used to prevent soil erosion, stabilize riverbanks that were like crumbling, reclaim wetlands. So if there's like a really swampy wetland area, you could plant a bunch of willows there and they would kind of suck up a lot of that water. Um, and they would use pallard willow trees. Pallard trees are trees that are continuously like cut back, right? So you like trim it and then it grows back, and then you trim it and it grows back.
Hmm.
And so they would, as it's like growing back, we have these like adolescent younger shoots, and then they would use those for like tools and stuff. Also for musical instruments, so used to make flutes, whistles, cricket bats. I mean, the cricket bat obviously is like a newer type of thing, but whistles and flutes were used very often, and they were usually made in the spring because if you I guess in the spring the like outer bark peels off much easier. So you would just cut it and peel it off, and you could make a flute out of it. Um, and then, yeah, cricket bats, which still to this day, a lot of times cricket bats are still made from willow, mostly white willow. And then we have dyes. So the bark and the leaves can use to make dyes. It's a really pretty, like golden
Wow.
color. Now,
That's rad.
this picture I took from this person. I was just looking for like pictures of willow dyed cloth, and then this like Instagram reel came up. Now, I don't know anything about this person, her other posts, so I
I'm
don't
gonna
know.
look her
Maybe.
up because I want to see what, like, I love Mordants and
Yeah,
what.
she does the whole process. She creates a video with the whole
Ooh,
process, and
okay,
she
I need
like
to
you
make a
see
note.
her taking the leaves and all of this stuff, and and then she tells you exactly what kind of cloth it is. So really good stuff. Again, I didn't watch any of her other stuff. I don't know if I align with her
And
other
on
stuff. Maybe,
Instagram,
maybe
you
not.
said?
But this video was really, really good.
Kate M. Nolan. Okay, I like that.
Um, what else? Yes, so really pretty colors. I mean, all of them are pretty, but I really like this golden color.
I know, me too.
Yeah, it's nice. Okay. And then also used for fuel and charcoal because the wood burns super quickly. So it was used for like charcoal production, for like art or like writing, and then also used for firewood, early gunpowder production even. So used for like fuel and charcoal and stuff. Okay, so let's get into some like history and lore. Now, there's a lot of like general mentions of Willow, so we're just tapping on a couple of them. But we have Shakespeare's Willow song in Othello?
Othello.
Othello, right? I was like, I don't think that you pronounce the double O. So, one of the most famous literary references to Willow. And so, the Willow song is sung like shortly before her death. And the song tells of a woman abandoned by her lover and mourning beneath a willow tree, which is very symbolic. So, the willow tree is representing like heartbreak and abandonment and mourning. And it's still like a common like folk ballad. Then we have another Shakespeare, which is Ophelia in Hamlet. So the famous scene describes her falling into a stream from a willow tree, and which inspired one of the most iconic paintings. Love Ophelia painting, one of my favorites, and everybody knows of it. I'm sure this is
I love
it.
that.
So this is supposed to depict her falling into the water from the willow tree.
So let me tell you, there was a movie when I was a kid. It's, I don't know what it is. I need to find it, but it like opens with these like a group of girls from a school trying to recreate this Ophelia painting with like a camera. Like they were like all like, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's like
Interesting.
exactly. I know.
Huh. Like a real life like portrait instead of a painting.
Yeah,
Like a
exactly.
picture.
Yeah,
Interesting.
exactly. Like a
Huh.
picture.
That's cool. Interesting. I'd be into that. I would definitely be into that photo shoot.
I know, me too.
Um, okay, so then we have it's like a American folk bluegrass song called Bury Me Beneath the Willow, which was later recorded by the Carter family, but they weren't the ones who like wrote it. So the lyrics describe somebody asking to be buried under a willow tree after losing a lover. So again, we're seeing it symbolizing heartbreak, remembrance, mourning, all of that. Then we have classical Chinese poetry, which is constant. A lot of classical Chinese poetry talks about willows, especially in somewhere else? Oh yeah, that's for the next one. So we have the Li Bai poet from the
Hmm.
Tang Dynasty who often wrote about willow trees, usually symbolizing farewell, nostalgia, longing, all of these things that we're continuing to see coming again and again and again. And then we also see in the classical Chinese like history, we see landscape paintings, lots of willows in landscape paintings, especially in the Song and Ming dynasties. That was just like the big thing, um, representing like quietness, contemplation, melancholy, sadness, things like that. And then we have the green willow or the willow wife. So, quick little story. So, in the story, Traveler encounters a beautiful woman who seems mysteriously connected to a nearby willow tree. The two fall in love, they marry, but the woman warns that he must never harm the tree. He doesn't. Years later, though, the willow is cut down by other people to make room for development. And after the tree is cut down, she grows very ill and then eventually disappears, revealing that she was actually the spirit of the willow tree itself. So as the tree was cut down, she became non-existent. This is a Japanese story, and it's one of a lot of like spirit tree stories that talk about how old trees can house spirits or natural beings, which we've talked about before with like Palo Santo. Carrying also like a theme, a moral theme for respect for nature and things like that. Oh, I do have a couple things also that I wanted to read from our friend Bayrel that I forgot to add, but I just wanted to mention them really quick. So, he says, what else? Ah, so this is more like magical stuff, I guess, but so it's considered a funeral herb, which we'll talk more about later. But he says planting a willow during your lifetime is said to protect you for when you take your final leave from your body. And so the willow must be thriving at the time of your death. And if it's thriving at the time of your death, then it's meant to be that like it's going to protect you into the passage of the afterlife or your next life or whatever.
Mm.
And then I have another little thing to talk about when we talk about deities and stuff. Okay, so let's go into medicinal. So anti-inflammatory, analgesic, antipyretic, antioxidant, astringent, antimicrobial, vermifuge, and of course our York
Rheumatic.
rheumatic.
Yes.
Um, just always York. So
Always. It's
always.
so strange.
We don't usually put the constitutes in here, but I just thought it would be interesting. So we have the salicin, which we'll talk about, flavonoids, polyphenols, and then tannins. A lot of trees have tannins. So you can use all parts of the tree. So the bark used for like pain relief, fever reduction, anti-inflammatory. The leaves are better for like poultice wound care, but you can get a little bit of pain relief from the leaves. The catkins or the flowers can be used for inflammation, and then the twigs or the young shoots can be used in like decoctions or infusions, things like that. Okay, so indigenous people from across North America have used the Salix family as a medicinal plant for pain relief, fever reduction, inflammation. And it didn't really seem to like matter which type of tree. It wasn't like, oh, only this willow or only this type of willow. It just depended on like where they were. But we see a lot of use for Pacific willow and Scouler's willow. Um, So we have like the Salish and other Pacific Northwest groups used it for like teas, infusions, pain, fever. Branches were also used in sweat lodges as like structures. We have the Blackfoot, which used it for pain, rheumatism. The Cherokee used it for like tea or infusions for fever, headaches, and the Lakota and other plains for like pain relief. So obviously lots of pain relief stuff going on. Now, even outside of indigenous communities, we have like the ancient Sumerians, Egyptians used it for pain, fever, inflammation. Even Egyptian medical texts say that like willow leaves are for remedies. We have our friend Hip Hippocrates who
Socrates or
talked about
hypocrite,
chewing the
hypocrite.
bark.
You know what? Yeah,
Yeah, whatever. Something. It's a
Hippocratic
meme.
oath. So it's Hippocrates,
Hippocrates,
I don't
I don't
know,
know. Whatever.
Hippocratic.
Um, but instead of like infusions, they would just chew the bark.
Mm.
And then especially during childbirth, and then in TCM, the willow bark and leaves good for fever, infections, joint pain. So then this brings us to the salicin, right? So salicin is the precursor to aspirin. When salicin enters your body, then it's converted into salicylic acid, which reduces inflammation. So let's talk about the history there. So, in 1763, there was an English clergyman named Edward Stone who noticed that the willow bark tasted really bitter, similar to quinine, which was a treatment for malaria. Now, I'm assuming that he wasn't just like eating the bark. I think that in the story, it's always left out that he probably watched like indigenous communities chewing it, but of course, that's never given any
Probably white
credit.
willow bark was one of the first things
Yeah,
that it was probably one of the earliest medicines, I bet, because
yeah,
it
yeah.
had such like a one for one reaction. It was
Right.
like
Yeah.
you eat it and it's like aspirin. So you eat it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's a pain
Right.
reducer, like immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
But I'm just saying, like, I
yeah,
mean, that's definitely true. But
yeah,
nobody, all of these, like, ancient physicians and scientists, I feel like most of them don't ever give credit to the indigenous community.
no,
It's not like he was like,
never.
oh, I wonder what would happen. I'm sure that he saw people chewing it and was like, oh, interesting. Let me try it. So, anyways, he noticed that it was like really bitter, and so he conducted some experiments giving powdered willow bark to people with fevers, and then reported these results to the Royal Society. So then, because the Royal Society was this like big fellowship, they were like, oh, interesting. Okay, there's good reports, so let's take this a step further. So then we have the isolation of the compound. So in 1828, chemists were able to isolate the compound salicin from willow bark. And then they discovered that, once it goes into our body, it converts it into salicylic acid, which reduces inflammation and pain. But the early forms of this used to cause serious stomach or irritation, which was so a lot of people were kind of scared to use this as medicine. Because again, as we know, like a lot of times if we're isolating a compound, you're taking high dosages of that compound. It's no longer like regular dosages, like as if you were just chewing the bark. It's like extreme dosages.
Was it like
So
meadowsweet or motherwort that had salicin in it, but it doesn't do that? One of those. I'll figure it out. I think it was
I don't know. Is it? I think it's
one of them.
motherwort. I
Yeah,
don't remember.
I'll put a link to
Yeah.
it in here, but
Yeah.
it has it doesn't do that, but it
Yeah.
has salicin in it. So
Well, the willow bark didn't do that either. I think that most people reported that it didn't give them stomach aches or stomach irritation when they were chewing the bark. It wasn't really until it was an isolated compound.
oh,
Yeah, which is what I'm
it
saying. Like, that's when it's like high, right? It's not just like taking a little bit of it with chewing the bark. It's like
concentrated.
shoving like high concentrations, which obviously is going to screw up your stomach. So, yeah. So then we have the creation of Aspirina in 1897 from Hoffman, who worked for Bayer, and he modified the salicylic acid to create a safer compound, the I don't know.
Acetyl salicylic acid.
Yeah. So this is aspirin. So this is like one of the perfect examples of using like natural medicine into like current day medicine and like the I don't know, like the trail that did it. So aspirin was first marketed in 1899. Still to this day, one of the most widely used medicines in the world. Okay, so let's get into some of this. So, element water, obviously, not all of them, but most willows grow near water. So very associated with water. Also early spring, for a couple of reasons. One, because that's when the catkins like are produced, and so as the seeds start turning into that cottony fluff, it kind of represents like renewal, rebirth, and also because spring is when they would use it to make like the musical instruments and stuff because the bark would kind of slough off easily. Planet usually associated with the moon because of like the watery, intuitive nature. Sign is Cancer, which I didn't know before looking into this, but I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Like that's
Lovely.
that's why it's one of my favorites.
Uh-huh.
Now, as for the cards, a few of them. So I found High Priestess, which is like hidden knowledge, intuition, magic. The Moon, dreams, illusion, subconscious, things like that. And then also the Queen of Cups because it's like emotional wisdom, empathy. I also associate it with like um manifestation. Like all of the queens I associate with manifestation, but especially the Queen of Cups is like something that you really want, like this emotional tie to something, and then like manifesting it. So I could definitely see a reason for it, all three of these.
Me too. I like them.
And then chakra, I found three, third eye, sacral, and heart, but not a lot of people said heart. And I don't know, I could see an argument for heart, but a lot of people were saying third eye, and sacral because sacral is where like our emotions are. And so like I could see the argument for heart, but I don't really like that association. I would say like sacral would be my big one, but I
Yeah,
could see third eye too.
me too. I could see both of those. Those are great.
Yeah. So then we have a few deities. So we have Brigitte, which she's associated with like healing, inspiration, sacred wells, so very like willowy nature. Hecate, which is like moon magic, liminal spaces, which willow is very tied to liminal spaces, right? Because it's technically needs the ground, but it like literally touches the water. Artemides, and then also, oh, I didn't look this up, Guanyin, who is often depicted like holding a willow branch and using it to asperge, kind of like healing water, which is pretty cool.
Very cool.
Now, I want to bring back our Beryl real quick. So he also says, all deities of underworlds associated with it. It's believed to be an herb which will provide a safe journey into the underworld. And then he says Orpheus turned into the willow when passing through the underworld to receive the virtue of eloquence. While in the gardens of Persephone, he placed his hand upon one of the magic willows to receive this gift. And then also says old pagan lore of Finland connects the Willen with the goddess Aino, 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 whose myth is told in this entry for the birch. In the tale, the willow arises out of her ribs, and so the tree remains sacred to her, which I didn't look into that, but that sounds pretty cool. That's something I'm definitely going to look at more into. And then also the like Ogham association. So Ogham letter Salale, I don't know how to say that, but corresponding to willows, and it represents intuition, dreams, lunar cycles, emotional depth. So the perfect tree for this. And it's also the letter S. So the Oghams are alphabets, right? They're like divination tools, but they're
Yeah.
also alphabets. And so this is the letter S, and then this is like what it represents.
Salya. That's look. You
Huh.
have the pronunciation down there.
Oh yeah, Salvia. That's right. I forgot that I specifically was looking for one that said how to pronounce it.
That's great.
Forgot about that. Okay, so doesn't really so continuing on with this, it doesn't really I was trying to figure out if there's a specific species of willow that is more associated with the ogum, and it said not really. It doesn't really specify. It really just talks about like the whole genus, but especially because the ogums come from like Ireland mostly, then a lot of people associate it with the goat willow, which we didn't talk about, but that's the most common type of willow species in like the whole Celtic region. And so it's believed that that's the one that it's associated with, but most people say like it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And then, so we have European folklore associated with mourning, grief, lost love, weeping willow, which we've talked about over and over again. Chinese culture, it's almost like a little bit of the opposite. So it's about renewal. So it's like the death card, right? It's like the death, the mourning, the loss, but then can goes into like the renewal. So renewal, resilience, protection. Willow branches are sometimes placed at doorways in Chinese culture for protection. And then just generally, I would say like dream stuff, intuition, healing, grief, and especially like kind of finding there's something about like accepting the sadness and then eventually being able to find the beauty from the grief. And that's really like the association that I have with the willow. It's like going within, right? Because you think like the umbrella canopy, like going within, going into like in the branches, being isolated, wanting to be isolated, to like feel those feelings, feeling very, very deeply. And then something beautiful about like emerging from the branches and then standing back and looking at the tree and admiring it from the beauty. Like that's what comes to my mind when I'm associating like it to different types of uses. So protection, obviously, too, because you can be under the willow tree, love, anything like that. So it's really about like emotions, I think, whether it's like the emotion that you feel from looking at the most beautiful piece of art, or the emotions associated with grief, or the whatever, but it's very emotion is like the feeling that I get from this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
That's awesome. I love Willow. I'm so happy. That is such a great tree. It's the
It's
best.
so good.
I know.
One of
Okay.
my favorites.
I know,
And
me too.
so the Ophelia painting is like one of my favorite. I'm not even really into like that style of painting, but like that's one of my favorites. And then I didn't even realize the association to like one of my favorite trees, the weeping willow, which is pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
And I found the movie and it's probably not worth watching the movie. It's like I don't know, maybe you want to watch it.
Yeah.
It's like doesn't get a very high rating.
Yeah.
Like I like 6.5 or something, not very good. But the opening scene is
Yeah.
worth and I may try to find the opening scene and just put a link to it right now.
Yeah.
But it's like because it's like that opening scene where and they use like a handheld clicker to like yeah, they're laying in water. It
Yeah.
would be such an amazing,
Nice.
yeah, it's called Fire with Fire.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So from
Nice.
1986. So
Yeah.
I was a freshman in high school, so it's understandable why that
Yeah. I might search it out just for the scene.
exactly. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
And we will see you at the next Ditch Witch Diaries.